Hello and welcome to the Medical Sales Podcast. I'm your host, Samuel, founder of a revolutionary medical sales training and mentorship program called the Medical Sales Career Builder, and I'm also host of the Medical Sales Podcast. In this podcast, I interview top medical sales reps and leading medical sales executives across the entire world. It doesn't matter what medical sales industry, from medical device to pharmaceutical to genetic testing and diagnostic lab, you name it, you will learn how to either break into the industry, be a top 10% performer within your role, or climb the corporate ladder. Welcome to the Medical Sales Podcast. And remember, I am a medical sales expert sharing my own opinion about this amazing industry and how it can change your life. Welcome to the Medical Sales Podcast and to the second part of our Unfiltered Medical Sales series with Todd Crowder. In part one, we cracked open what really motivates reps, how fear fuels performance, and what really separates average reps from true standouts. But today we're going to dive deeper. We're really talking about mastering the interview close, truly reading the room, researching your hiring manager, and how to really make yourself the obvious choice before you even show up. If you're ready to learn what truly gets you hired in this industry, you're in the right place. Let's get into it. Okay, I want to switch gears a little bit, and I want to get back to even before you get to all these parts of the interview, and I want to get to just when you show up to the interview, namely what you wear to these interviews. How are you dressed? How is everything looking? I love that when we opened this conversation up, we talked about you like to make people uncomfortable right off the bat. But before we even get there, what are you expecting to see in a face-to-face? You know what? Forget even face-to-face or a Zoom interview. What makes you feel confident that this person's in the right place based on what they're wearing? Give us your opinion on a man and a woman.
I think you're in business dress.
Okay.
I don't. It's like dating. Okay, you've got to put your best foot forward. I don't need you coming in there with a sport coat and unbuttoned shirt. I know it's different, and I'm a little more, like I said, I have an influence from the boomer. I'm a Gen Z. I mean,
So
a
you
Gen
want
X.
the tie. You're saying you want the tie.
I want the individual coat and tie as a guy,
Okay.
button-down shirt, tie sitting on right.
Okay.
I don't care if the tie's flashy. I don't care if the suit's flashy. I don't care if you have any style. I don't care if you have a bolo tie. I don't care if you have a cowboy hat on. You know, as long as you look professional.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what I am going to present to you for your first time meeting me. You would not go on a date, and nor would you want your date to show up looking like they just found something to throw on to make themselves look presentable.
But okay, and that's fair. But let's talk about it, because this is actually pretty nuanced. Because so you're saying that for you, business casual is not the way to go. You want business. For an interview, you want business.
Yes,
Period.
Business dress, absolutely. Because what's the worst that happens?
You know, it's a good point. Like, you can't. How can that be wrong? Even if you're overdressed, for for lack of a better word, how can that be wrong as opposed to being underdressed? Which
if the guy. So here's that individual I talked about before that leans back. He undoes his tie. He wants you to see you. Oh, take your jacket off. You know, just that. I want to see if he makes you so uncomfortable that you slip up and you start acting too casual.
Sure.
Because like it or not, the managers might be Gen Z. The millennials might be managers. But higher up the chain are old farts like me. Or old farts like my dad's age. You know, in their 60s. And those individuals.
So this is a great topic because we get really interesting scenarios. Here's one I'll give you. So you have your companies, right? And let's just be very raw about it. There's predominantly white companies. And all I mean by that is, these companies have, 60, 70% white, 30% everybody else, and it is what it is.
Yep.
And you have, let's just take a black individual that has a beard down to their chest. They got everything right. They even got the tie. Suits, It's perfect. The hair, the eyes, it focused. They've delivered in every way of the word. But the fact remains they got this beard that's going down to their chest, and it stands out, and it stands out powerfully. They show up to your interview. Give us your thoughts, Todd.
I don't care.
You don't care.
I don't care about the beard unless it looks like He's never kept it. And it looks like it's scraggly. He looks more like Duck Dynasty. He came walking in and he's been sitting there in the woods for 6 weeks and hasn't shaved. It's not kept. But if it's kept and it's long and then it comes down to here, part of it's culture.
Sure.
And I can't discount that aspect of it.
Sure.
I'm not having, SEAL Team 6 come in there and high in tights and clean shaven and everything's pressed to death. No, that's not who I'm interviewing.
Sure.
I'm interviewing an individual. There has to be some individuality with it. Like, I like the fact that somebody can come in with a long beard, or someone comes in with a bolo tie, or someone comes in with a fancy looking jacket that I know I would never be able to pull off.
Okay.
But you know what? I like the fact that they're willing to take the individuality, but also remain professional.
Okay, so let's stick with this example. Okay. And
I lost my first interview by not being individual and being too corporate for the manager.
Wait, you what? Say it again.
I lost my first interview. I was on an airplane flying back from Atlanta to El Paso, sitting next to a manager of Galderma. Didn't know anything about the company.
Sure.
We were sitting there talking. I was on a buddy pass at the time, so you had to dress up back then. You had to at least have a coat on and slacks. And so him and I had a great conversation. We went in there, and I went and got my military press. I had everything pressed tight. It was down the seams, everything. The tie was pressed. It looked like everything was ironed onto me. And at the end of the interview, he goes, I just wish I would have seen the guy that I talked to on the plane.
Wait,
that was an individual.
Whoa. Okay, I need to get clear on the story. You met a hiring manager on a plane, and you were dressed down, and you guys had a great bonding moment. You went to the actual interview, and you got all professional and dressed up, and he counted that against you?
He did, because the individual that was sitting on the plane had a nice plaid jacket on, had a nice shirt, but it was unbuttoned a little bit. I had slacks on. It was easy conversation. And I'm sure it wasn't just my appearance.
Sure.
Being one of my first professional interviews. But he wanted to see more individuality. In fact, one of the questions was, why do you pick a solid tie versus something more colorful?
Okay, so hold on, Todd. So you're telling me your first experience, you lost your first interview. But then in the same vein, you say that you expect to see a suit and tie buttoned up to the max for an interview.
But the individual can come in there however the suit and tie looks. I have a blue suit, and it's not like blue suit.
Wow, that's blue. That is very blue. That's blue as it gets.
I got my cowboy boots on there. You
wouldn't wear that to an interview, though.
But here's the thing. Depends on where I'm interviewing. Certain towns are going to require certain things.
You're right. Let's make it hyper specific. Hologic or Galderma, right? You're interviewing for you are the hiring manager, and someone comes dressed up like that. You would advise that, or you wouldn't.
If your interview on that opening position is in Dallas, Texas, you're fantastic. If that position's in the Bronx in New York, you're a moron.
You know what? That's fair. That is fair. Region matters. Location matters. Yeah. I received that.
So one of the things I was telling you about before, when we had the panel interview, and I was the only white dude in the person. Well, Kavisha and I, sorry if I should be, my counterpart and I, we discussed this a while back. And because the territory was majority going to be inner city Atlanta and South, which is predominantly African American, I said, look, I called her up. I said, look, there's no easy way to say this. We got to hire a black person. And she started dying laughing at me. She goes, did you just say that? I said, yeah. She goes, I was thinking it. I just didn't want to say it. Again, let's just be honest.
Well, I mean, it is what it is.
The white guy walking into Grady ain't going to do good. I could be the greatest sales rep in the world. I am not going to fit inside of Grady. It's not going to work.
Fair.
I have twice the hurdle to get over.
Right.
In the same breath, I don't want to take the black individual and send them to the North Georgia mountains.
Right.
Because they have the exact same hurdle to overcome.
Fair. Okay.
You have to, where you hire and how that person presents, you have to understand the culture by which
Sure.
that individual comes into. New Orleans is very different than Fort Smith, Arkansas.
Sure. Okay. So let's expand the conversation because now first of all, I love that the fact remains that you got to be nuanced and you got to pay attention to where you're at, which is just necessary. Let's talk about piercings, right? So, woman comes up and she shows up to the interview and she got a nose ring just hanging out. Everything else is on point. I mean, the outfit is professional as it gets. The hair is perfect. She looks the part, but she has a nose ring right here. What's Todd thinking?
If she has everything else in checks, I think then at the interview, if she's my candidate, I'm not going to disqualify her because of a nose ring, but it is going to be a discussion. And part of the discussion is I have to know who she's going to be interviewing with next and what they think. So I think as a candidate, you also don't need to shy away from the fact that you have one. You also need to understand that maybe inside the OR, it might not be as professional to have.
So for me, okay, I'm just gonna nail it on the head. For me, I think it's an absolute no, and here's why. If you got a nose ring, no matter how you cut this cake, let's just go back to to who you are. You are a Generation X. And let's go back to your dad, and your dad's a boomer. And let's go to the reality that if you're entering any hospital system, especially in medical device, you're dealing with decision makers that are most of them are probably Generation X. Some of them are probably boomers. Yeah, you might have some millennials, but not yet. Most of them are still Generation X and boomers. And they're the ones that are just overseeing everything and being a big part of the decision-making process. Even if you have a millennial that's running things, there's enough boomers and Generation Xers that are part of the decision process. I'm automatically saying a nose ring is going to make that a problem. Period. There's no other way to cut the cake.
If that person is of Indian background and it is a cultural deal, to me, there are certain cultures that you look at, and that is part of their culture to it. Also,
that is the only exception, though.
No, it is. It is. But also, you have to know where you're sending that individual. Because more and more of my nurses have nose rings sitting all over the place. I would tell them, and that's why I said beforehand, we would have the discussion at the end. If they check all boxes with me, at the end, I would advise them not to go wear it doing for it. But if you're inside the OR.
Okay, so hold on. So you're saying your nurse reps have nose rings?
My nurse reps have nose rings, yeah.
Really?
I'm not a fan.
So when they interviewed, rocking the nose ring, all good.
I will say there are different. If they have I look like a bull, the one I call it goes.
You're right.
So there are different qualifications, I guess. If you have the bull thing, looks like I can take it as a door knocker and knock on you.
Yes, yeah. If you got
that is a definite no.
Okay, so hold on. So let's talk about it.
It's hypocritical. I get it.
I think we're getting more nuanced, and this is important for everyone to understand. So you're saying if you got the little nose ring on the nose, dot, whatever, diamond or silver, whatever, that can be acceptable, especially when it's cultural. But if you got the bull coming out, making the little design fashion statement, absolute no. And to our discussion, that is what I was talking about. So we actually had that, and it was tough because the individual was like, "Look, this is how I am. This is how I show up. This is me, and I don't understand why it should influence how I show up as a proper candidate." And my stance was, I appreciate your sentiment, but the reality is, no matter how you cut this cake, everybody that sees you is judging you on this bull thing before you open your mouth. So you are literally especially in this industry where there's enough bias existing, why would you put yourself in a position, unless it's cultural, which it wasn't, or religious, which it wasn't, why would you put yourself in a position?
There's no culture, religion, door knocker.
Right.
Okay, let's just be honest. Secondly, if you have somebody like me interviewing you, I can get very fixated on one thing. And if I'm sitting here staring at this the entire time, whatever you're saying.
Exactly. It's a distraction. It's a flat out distraction.
You don't want something that you can control to be the distraction. That's completely controllable.
Sure.
If it's a small little dot like a lot of the Indian culture has around here,
Sure.
I'm less. I'm more liberal in that aspect of things for that.
Sure.
Because
Sure.
but if it is something gaudy, if it's like hanging out here and it loops down around here, comes back
Yeah.
in, or
Yeah.
it looks like, they have to literally, they would have to have the perfect interview, the perfect resume, and that be the one thing. And then I would be like, okay, look, going forward, that needs to come out. If it's a problem, then we need to part ways now.
Got
And
it.
I'm more than willing to have that conversation.
Got it. Okay. Now I love this. Let's be specific, because believe it or not, Todd, people are showing up exactly like this. So this conversation is relevant. Men and earrings.
No,
No.
no.
Okay. Hard no.
Hard no. Hard no. You can wear them in the OR if you want. Do not wear them through the interview.
Got it.
Period.
And that's fair.
I don't care if you're interviewing with every male, every female, every person you interview. You're fortunate enough, and their whole line of contraction is the same culture as you. It is still, to me, a no.
That's fair. That's fair. You know, I do believe that during the interview process, it really is about putting your best foot forward.
Yep.
Once you've just demonstrated a level of competency, your customers love you, and you can do, and everybody knows what you can do and loves you doing it. Sure, there's a little bit more leeway to do whatever you feel comfortable doing. But in the interview process, you got to prove yourself first before you can take advantage of any of that leeway. And I firmly believe
to me, it's the same thing. If you have tattoos, my wife has 2 sleeves. Okay, she'll be the first to tell you, having worked in corporate America for herself, she wore, because her sleeves come all the way down to her wrist.
Sure.
She wore long sleeves. She went to interviews with long sleeves.
Sure.
She never got to a point where she would just have her 2 sleeves showing, because she knows that some people still to this day do not find it acceptable.
Sure.
And so she puts it up. I'm sorry, that's their right. They're the ones that have the job. You don't. Tattoos should not be at a point in time, in my opinion, like earrings, that should be shown.
Sure. So now I want to talk about a touchier subject, because this is what we do here.
Good.
So earlier you mentioned how, you know, if you're black, if you're in charge of the hiring and you're black, you're not going to send someone to the northern parts of Arkansas where you just know they're going to have some serious issues. And if you're white, you're not going to send someone to the deepest parts of, I don't know, Maryland or something, where you know that almost every physician's black, and it's like, how are they going to thrive? However, the reality is there's a lot of predominantly white areas.
Sure.
And there's only so much opportunity for a black rep or an Indian rep or an ethnic rep to take advantage of being in an ethnic spot where they thrive, and they kind of have to thrive in a white environment. And I'll speak for myself. Every single company I've ever worked for, it was white, right? I was the black guy that was being immersed into a white environment. And, you know, I'm blessed to be able to say that I was able to demonstrate my competencies very quickly in my career, so that it was rarely a question, right? And even though I was in, I'll give you an area that's really, really Orange County, right? And if you don't know what I'm talking about, everybody listening, go ahead and watch a show called something about Orange County, and you'll see what I mean. But
my old home office at Applied Medical was right there, Rancho Santa Margarita.
You know what I'm talking about. So, but the point is, my results, and the way I presented myself, and the way I was able to target how I'd be effective in that space, got me the job, and I delivered every single time. But you just said that you wouldn't send someone black to a predominantly white area like the northern parts of Arkansas. How do you balance that? When do you do one versus the other, based on my experience and based on what you stated?
It's really touchy as a manager, because there's some areas that can be blended, and it's not going to be a problem. But there are other areas that you run into. So the person I referred to on that panel earlier, when she first got hired on, she was not only a female working in a predominantly male, she was also a black woman, and she was the only black woman at that company. Wow. Period.
Yeah.
It was no other black woman. And
Sure.
so she had to overcome not only the situation of being a black rep, and
Sure.
we had a black rep that fell underneath her and was not performing.
Okay.
And she had to have a serious heart-to-heart talk and her and I were talking about this. And she said, you have to understand, as black people, we already are under a tight microscope. As a black woman in this group, you're even tighter. Black men have more of a leeway than black women.
Sure.
Because we can't make a mistake. We have no room for error. They are watching us and waiting for us almost to mess up. And I said, that's not true. She goes, Todd, it is true. Whether you want to say it or not, it doesn't matter. It is true. Look how many black women are sitting inside of medical devices. It's the smallest number there possibly could be.
Those are just the facts.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And I think we because I grew up going into the inner city of Atlanta playing basketball. I know I look like a great basketball player. I'm all of 5'10". I don't shoot. I can't really dribble, and I have no vertical. But other than that, I could foul anybody.
Sure.
I was a phenomenal basketball player. But I grew up going into the inner city and playing basketball, so I loved it so much. But I was
you learned a thing or two. Sure.
Oh yeah. No, I learned that's all I'm good for is fouls. 5 fouls I'm great at. I made every all-star team because I could out-hustle everybody and foul out.
Yep.
It's phenomenal. But so I kind of grew up in that era, and my dad made sure of it because he kind of grew up in a blue-collar, tough area. And even though I lived in suburban white America, he wanted me to understand that what I had was a gift, and that you need to understand where hard knocks comes from and be able to be appreciative for what you have. So he made sure that I was down at Butler Street YMCA almost every Saturday when I was growing up as a kid, being the only white kid on the court. Mm-hmm. Or we'd have 4 of us go down with us.
Wow, look at him. Okay.
And so I grew up a little bit different. And Anna, my wife, she grew up in a completely black church, even though she was literally the only white kid in her school.
Wow, okay.
So I think we kind of approach things, and we tried to sit there and go, okay, based on our preferences of life and where we decided to live, but we don't forget where we came from. And I'm okay with sitting there talking to a black individual saying, okay, let's just be real about everything. Sure. A black guy going into North Georgia, probably not a good idea. A black guy working anywhere from mid-Atlanta, Alpharetta area where I live, all the way south is going to be perfectly fine. Sure. So let's get you the best hospital that we can possibly get you a territory. And that's cool. Every town's different. Right. Every town is, look, you can put a black or white person in El Paso, Texas, and they're both going to fail. They've got to be the best you could possibly be because they don't want either one of us there. That's where I started.
What do they want? Who do they want in El Paso, Texas?
They want a Hispanic guy walking or a Hispanic girl walking in there. They don't want the gringo walking in there. Sure, and I stood out like a sore thumb. And I was right out of the military, so it made it even worse because I had my high and tight haircut, my pressed uniform coming in there. And I stood out so bad.
Right.
It was just, I mean, and I didn't know a lick of Spanish. And so it was just really awful. Yeah. And I knew they were all making fun of the gringo because I remember hearing that word plenty of times when I walked down the hallway. Mm-hmm. And I was the only white guy sitting in place. So I think you have to be realistic where you're going to apply and understand that if you're of a minority, you're going to have a higher expectation to reach. And the bar is going to be set higher for you.
And that's just what it is.
And that's life.
What it is. Yeah. Let's talk about what's going on right now then in I guess, I hate to say government, but like politically. Yeah. DEI is being, for lack of a better word, eradicated and eradicated fast. I don't want to hear so much about what you think about the administration or not. I want to hear more about, do you think that the fact that DEI is being removed the way it is going to influence what we're talking about right now and make it worse? Or do you think that it still doesn't matter? Or do you, DEI or not DEI, we still have to pay attention to the fact that you're going to thrive based on what you look more like when you're a candidate trying to get into a certain space? Like, how do you feel what's going on politically ties into this conversation?
I think I believe it's going to make it a little bit of a bar higher for the minority group to have to get across, because they're going to have to show that they're not being hired or being rejected, more importantly, because, oh, we don't have to do this DEI thing anymore, and therefore we don't have to just hire and meet a quota of a black female or a Hispanic male or a black male here, and we need to, because the pendulum swings back and forth. And it doesn't just swing a little bit. It swings giant one way, and it swings giant the other.
Yeah, there's going to be a response. Everything that's going on right now, 5-10 years, there's going to be just an extreme response to it all, and we're going to see.
And that's why I wish we could just have a settling, an understanding that by allowing other voices of extremes on both sides to have conversations and platforms to talk from, those of us that sit left to center, right to center, almost are being forced to try to drive to one direction or another, because those of us that I believe majority of America sits inside of would be much better to have that conversation than the extremes to the left and the extremes to the right.
Right.
Because I think if you're a minority going to work for like you said, a Hologic or a Ethicon or a Medtronic. Medtronic's gotten a little bit different. Medtronic's
really, pretty diverse. Like more like probably like Stryker. Stryker is
Stryker. Well, first of all, if you're not an athlete or you're not a former military guy, you might as well just go ahead and go join the military for a few weeks and then come back and say, I'm a military guy. But I think you're going to have to elevate your game higher if you're a minority going into one of those companies. Sure. And if you don't feel that that's something you want to do, then go to a different company. You still have the right not to take an interview. Sure. And be careful in your selection. And in years from now, 5 years from now, when the pendulum might swing completely different. It
swings back the other way. Yep.
You can go back and go interview at one of those companies because now you've got 5 years experience. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that might be your dream company. It might be your dream to be working for Ethicon. Mm-hmm. And if you just view Ethicon and you're a minority, I'm not one, but if I was in that position, my mindset would say that might not be the best place. That might be my dream in 5 years from now.
Sure.
But I'm going to go do this so I can have experience. I'm not going to just let that be my no and get done. Sure. Now, I'm still going to shoot for it.
Right.
I might still take an interview just to kind of see.
Right.
And test the temperature.
Yeah.
But understand the way the culture, it swings back and forth. Because there was the opposite side. There was people that I've known at Medtronic and Convenient specifically that if you're a white male, don't even apply to go to management. Don't even think.
For real.
You white dudes, you ain't getting nothing. You sit as a rep or you can leave.
Sure.
If you don't like that.
Yeah.
So, and if you're a minority female, dude, you were going to the top. You were heading there. And so you have the opposite of it.
Right. Right.
Right, wrong, or indifferent. Those are just the facts. Not meant to be political, but that's what it was.
Since we're on this topic, I want to talk about something that I'm seeing a lot more of, and I want to know your thoughts on it, especially considering your Generation X. Ageism, right? So in 2025, we have a lot of people that are 45 to 55 years old that are like, you know what? I've put in all my energy, whether they were a clinician or a business owner or some senior level of some industry that's in administration of a business. They're like, I put in my time and I want to, my kids are grown. I just paid my last one off to college they're about to end. And I got all this time on my hands. I don't want to have any more children. And I want to give my all to a career path. And I love this medical sales space. I have a lot of competencies in here, but oh my goodness, as soon as they see my resume or I get on camera, it's all over. What would you say to that? I hope you're enjoying today's episode. And I want to let you know our programs cover the entire career of a medical sales professional. From getting into the medical sales industry, to training on how to be a top performer in the medical sales industry, to masterfully navigating your career to executive level leadership. These programs are personalized and customized for your specific career and background, and trained by over 50 experts, including surgeons. Our results speak for ourselves, and we're landing positions for our candidates in less than 120 days in top medical technology companies like Stryker, Medtronic, Merck, Abbott, you name it. Would you run an Ironman race without training and a strategy? You wouldn't. So why are you trying to do the same with the medical sales position? You need training, you need a strategy, and you need to visit evolveyoursuccess.com, fill out the application, schedule some time with one of our account executives, and let's get you into the position that you've always dreamed of.
Be careful who you select to go interview with. Be honest with you. Show your worth of somebody that looks around and I was the 5th oldest at Hologic from president down.
5th oldest? What does that even mean?
Like the president of our division.
Oh, you mean like the 5th oldest person?
Yes.
In the whole organization?
Yes.
Oh my God. Okay.
So no joke, they used to call me Uncle Todd. Like I had reps. That was just when I won COE the first time there, they introduced me as Uncle Todd walking up on stage.
Wow.
I almost jokingly grabbed a cane and walked up on stage because it was like, wow. I mean, the president, the vice president, the vice president of marketing, the vice president of sales, the area business director is what they called him over there. He was older than me by about 5 years.
Sure.
My manager, every one of the reps were 30 years and younger. And I just laughed. I said, you let this old man beat you. I think I'd be pretty upset. But ageism is real. It is a real thing. I think you have to be careful who you target, who you want to go work with.
So that's tough, right? Because in our program, we have, everybody, the majority of let's be honest, the medical sales career builder is designed for someone that wants to break into the industry. Yep. So everybody that comes to us is green, including the older individuals. So you have these 45 to 55-year-old individuals that are like, look, just give me a chance. I'm up, I'm moving. I'm not, they're not old by any standard. And it's like, okay, how, in your opinion, Todd, how do they need to present themselves to be given a chance?
They're almost their own minority, and they have to present themselves more articulate, more ability to have reasons why life has taught them how to handle adversity more so than an individual coming right out of college who still doesn't know anything, but doesn't know anything about life.
Sure.
Hasn't had to get up every single day and go put food on the table, maybe work a different job. And I want to break into a new industry, but I was working, whatever, X job. And I did this thing for 20 years. My kids are grown and gone. And I want to go in there, and I'm willing to be able to put the same work in as I did as a, mid-level manager to be a junior rep to start off in the business.
Sure.
And you have to be humble enough. If you're going to go after the big guys, you're going to have to be humble enough to be able to have that conversation. And you need to make sure financially that you're okay to do that, because
right. But
you have to understand that.
So that's what I want to hear, I guess, is, Todd, you've hired hundreds of people. What would you, let's just be opinionated and specific to you.
Okay.
What would you need to hear from a 52, 53-year-old person that wants to be a clinical specialist or maybe not associate sales rep in this space, make $80,000 a year base plus a 20 or 30 year commission, is totally fine with that. What would you hear from them that make you say, I'm gonna take a chance on you?
I want to see where they have allowed life to knock them down and them not stay down. Because if they're not coming from this industry, I need to understand, because look, it is not a week go by that every medical sales device rep, no matter how many years you've been in this, that you haven't been knocked down, that you haven't been put back in your place, that maybe you thought you were better than you were, and then all it takes is a tech or a nurse or even the doctor to knock you back down a few notches for you to realize you're not one of us. Sure. You're a guest.
Sure.
I need to hear that they have overcome life and it's hard knocks, because it's going to be that. And I will, maybe because of my age, I would tend to lean more to that individual than I would a rookie. Just because if they've been able to overcome, if you put 2 resumes on there, and I've got an individual that's worked 25 years, B2B, whatever the case might be, selling Xerox copiers still to this day, and he decides he wants to get out or she wants to get out and go into medical sales, I'm going to ask the uncomfortable question to them: are you financially okay? You answer that question however you want to answer it. You can call my HR. But I'm not asking you dollar amounts, are you okay? I'm asking, because you're asking what you've been successful with, to come step back and go into a new field. You need to be financially sound and not making this move, because you're going to be taking financially a step back before you can move forward.
Sure.
But you've shown me that you've been able to go in a B2B situation and selling and understand that you're going to get kicked in. You're going to get told no 10,000 times to your one yes, and you're okay with it. I mean, you just have to display it.
Yeah.
Give examples to it.
No, I get it. I want to get back into the dress code here. We addressed men, but we didn't address women. And I love the fact that we didn't address women, because I want to address women from a man's perspective. So, like you said, I loved your absolute. You were like, look, Samuel, tie, suit, let's go. I love that. It's crystal clear, right? So if anyone's interviewing someone like Todd, you better have a tie on, or you've already lost points stepping into the interview. I appreciate that. What does it look like for a woman, though? What are the absolutes in your mind that you expect to see? Just like a tie for a man, what is it for a woman, and how do they need to be dressed?
I think you're in a pantsuit yourself. I think you're dressed up. You have a blazer on top. You have your slacks on. You have, I don't care what color shirt, but you have a nice shirt. It's buttoned up. It's not buttoned down. It looks like you could go present on Wall Street if you were walking in.
Okay, so it's you said pantsuit. A skirt wouldn't work.
No.
Okay.
And the reason why is because I'm, at the same time I'm interviewing you, I'm also wanting to protect you, because you don't want to give off the wrong impression at the same time. Call it whatever you want to call it. You call it sexism, but when you're the hiring manager and this is going to be your rep, you need to make sure they need to know you're trying to protect them at the same time. And that you don't want to put themselves in a situation where their dress is more provocative to somebody else than it needs to be. Show up in pantsuit. Show up if you want to wear a different color underneath it, whatever. You can't ever go wrong with black. You can't ever go wrong with an undercolor. But don't have something buttoned down. Don't have a short skirt on. And I don't want to see somebody, because then people go to the opposite extreme and the skirt hit all the way to the floor. Okay.
So wait. So not a short skirt, or not a long skirt, or not a skirt, period?
Not a skirt, period. Just show up in a pantsuit like you were going to walk into Wall Street and present. And if you don't understand that portion of it, then go watch a couple movies where women have gone in there and presented to places. Sure. Go turn on TV, and you don't want to fit a bad mold. You don't want people to think that you got the job because your legs were showing or because your blouse was buttoned down too low. You don't want, because you're already going to be, look, you got white men predominantly running the whole thing. Then you've got the minority men running after that and running the whole thing. Then you've got white women coming in behind them. Then you got black women and Asian women and Indian women all coming in after that aspect of it. So predominantly, 60% to 65% of all decision makers are men, black or white. You don't want the others, and you have to look at it from the standpoint, if she's willing to dress that way coming to interview with me, how is she going to dress walking to that OR? How are you going to look when the nurse who's been there and she's a little bit overweight and she's grouchy every day, and you come clicking in here with your high heels and your high skirt and your dangly earrings and your made up face walking in there? Oh yeah, no wonder why the doctors want to use your product. And then you get accused behind your back of reason why the doctors like your product, because they want to see you there, or you're lending favors. Let's just be honest. We're gonna break the barriers. That's what you're trying to protect as a manager yourself. True story. I had a rep one time who decided to have an affair with a doctor.
Mm.
And I had an assistant manager. She was a female. And I pulled her in the office and I said, look, I can't go ask this question. I need you to find out, is this true? Because our product sales went through the roof in her territory. That doctor was using everything, even things he had no business using. I mean, they went through the roof. And so I had to call it. And I said, look, I need to understand because I have to go report to my bosses why our sales went through the roof. And to come to find out, yes, she was sleeping with this doctor. They went on and got married. But you're going to get accused of that. And I can imagine those nurses in that room when she walked in. Oh, yes, he's going to use whatever she said. I mean, she could walk in there and say, hey, doc, you know, we need to switch to all these coffee mugs that say Philadelphia on there. And guess what? By the end of the day, we're going to have nothing but coffee mugs in Philadelphia because she's over there sleeping with the doctor.
So
you don't want that to be your image as you walk into the door.
In that particular situation, what was the conclusion?
Conclusion was that you better not cause the business to go south because, and I had her tell this conversation. I did not have this conversation because there was no way.
But I mean, but there was no consequence. It sounds like everything was fine.
No.
Company benefited, she benefited, and then she legitimately married this doctor, which there are no rules against.
Nope.
And that was the end of it.
Yep.
Wow.
I lucked out because it could have gone the other way.
And that's what I was going to ask you. I was going to say, how often does that happen? And do you have an example where it did not work out?
Fortunately, I do not have an example where that, because I've always, from that point forward, I always let reps say, look, it's not a good idea to date within the same hospital that you call upon, in the same territory that you call upon. Because if something goes south for whatever reason, you get married, you get divorced, you break up, you cause immediate tension in that hospital that we are going to have to address.
Those are the facts.
And I don't care if it's a tech, a doctor, a nurse, a materials manager, you know, whatever the case might be, anybody that has influence inside that hospital, you've now created a problem for a company and you for you being in that hospital. Mm-hmm. And I promise you, you lose. Mm-hmm. That means we lose. Mm-hmm. I can't tell you who to date. I can't tell you who to fall in love with. Mm-hmm. I'm just telling you, don't put yourself in a situation where you're going to jeopardize your business.
Right.
Because of a relationship.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And just for the audience, do you see it a lot? Dating with reps and physicians?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. But for the lion's share of what you've seen, it all works out?
No.
Okay, so I'll ask it again. Do you have a story or a situation that you know of where it did not work out?
Not under my management.
Of course.
I will say that. I have seen reps.
Yeah. Well,
I have seen reps date nurses, and their business not work well. And it's gone because they look, I mean, there's a lot of times they didn't understand this, that you're going to be long hours with these people. And you want to be relatable. And you want to let them into your life. And sometimes when you start sharing the intimacies of your life, struggles, bad, good.
Connections inevitably developed.
Spouse is this, and spouse does this, and kids drive me crazy with this, and oh, mine do too. And then all of a sudden it becomes a little flirtatious. And then it's like, oh, you've got to understand where that barrier or hard line is. It's okay to be friendly and share. Yeah, you know what I did yard work this weekend. Not get too intimate into your details of your life, because that opens the door for things to go into a different level, which can be a jeopardy to your business. Now, it can work out. Majority of the times you have a couple of dates and then all of a sudden it doesn't work out. And now all of a sudden you might have interrupted a marriage. Now,
Weird now. It's weird now.
now you've put yourself, I've had reps that were friends of mine that have messed around with PAs.
Sure.
Oh, it's not the doctor. It's not really a decision. Yeah, but you know
Right.
what that PA does? It sits next to that doctor. And I had a rep last week call me up and said, "Hey, this doctor just finished their degree. They've been here about 6 months. She and I are really hitting it off." And I said, "Okay, she's been there 6 months. You've been there 8." I said, "How big of a business do you think she is?" "Oh, man, she's going to be huge. She's like the only other GYN in town." He goes, "I really like her." I said, "Young man," I'm not going to give his name in case he pulls up his.
Please don't. Please don't.
"Young man, I'm going to tell you, this is going to go bad."
Wow. You just said it like that.
Because
Wow.
you're not in the same town. You're not going to move to that town. And if you're not willing to drop things and move to that area, you messing around with this doctor, if you let it get to that point, is going to jeopardize your business in its totality at that. And then I remind every one of them, this is a small community. Everybody talks. And you don't want your name associated with somebody that's going out there trying to earn their way to a hospital by having relationships with people.
How did this person receive it, and what happened?
Fortunately, they're young. And so I said, "You're in a great town with a whole lot of college kids that are young professionals. I would just advise you to look elsewhere. I can't tell you who to date, but I would think that you'd be able to have better success outside of our industry than inside the industry."
Sure.
You also have to worry about that sometimes when you have inside your own company, because that can get too dicey.
I've seen both. I've seen a lot more of that than I've seen dating, doctors or dating staff.
I
I've
think
seen a
it's
lot
also
more.
town dependent too, because some things are really taboo. Like doctors and reps, they have a distance and they make sure there's a buffer there. Here in Atlanta, I tell you, I've probably seen a little bit.
Well, don't get it twisted. Almost every doc, not every, but 75% of the doctors shoot their shot. I'm not saying that I haven't seen that. Doctors see reps, and especially the attractive reps, and I've seen them shoot both ways. Where the female doctor is shooting her shot at the male rep, and the male doctor shooting his shot at the female rep. I see that 1,000 times over. But as far as actually mingling and becoming something, I've seen a lot more of that in the dynamic within the company of like a senior leader and a younger whoever. And I've seen it work where they got married and it was just accepted. And I've seen where it did not work at all. And both people ended up being terminated, senior leader and rep. So I've seen both.
Yeah. There was a situation where I was with Ethicon decades ago.
Sure.
And this guy was hiring, straight out of magazine models. And there was some inappropriateness going on, and the girls kind of all got together and got him ousted. And that company then decided to make sure that everybody stayed quiet. Those girls were promoted.
Wow. Really?
Yep.
Okay, then. That's a whole other episode, right?
Yeah, I know.
Wow. Okay. Look. Yeah, it's wild. I think, gosh, even my younger days, when I first started, I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I didn't know what the rules were. And I had to learn the hard way. There are things you just don't do. And I also was blessed to see people do things that I considered doing and now learn that way. Okay, I will not do that. But it's tough. I think it's tough because if you have a genuine connection, even if you are a rep and you meet this doctor and you guys have a genuine connection, you genuinely hit it off, and that's, your soulmate, who's to say you can't explore and live that reality? So it's tough. It is tough.
If you're going to do that, you have to have honest discussion with that individual about the job itself.
Sure.
Because you also don't want it to be, for example, working with our tissue. I don't want to have a rep that has a genuine relationship with a GYN or that's married to a GYN, even though because then it becomes, oh, they're using or they're pushing that because of their spouse or significant other. Yes, it's great for profit.
Okay, but let me stop you, Todd, because let's say that is the case.
Am I going to fire somebody for it?
Right. Let's say that's the case. My whole thing about that is,
if it's already pre-existing, you're hiring the individual, then you know that's the case. That's one situation.
Okay.
If you hire a young single individual, male or female, and a relationship develops, I think I can't tell you not to do that, but I can tell you you're jeopardizing not only your business, but mine. And if you're jeopardizing my business, that means you're jeopardizing my family. And I'm not going to put my family because I am giving you a piece of my family's income. By me hiring you, I am saying, I trust you enough. Here's part of my family's income. We're going to rely on you and your relationships. Because I tell people, I'm buying your relationship. Where I work from, that's what I'm buying.
Yeah.
And if you jeopardize that because he or she can't not, then that's a conversation we have to have. I think you have to be willingness, especially nowadays. Where is that going to go? Is this a fling? Is this a serious thing? Where are we moving in this direction? If you can't even openly talk to me or you tell me it's none of my business, well, it is. It's all of my business because I'm giving you part of my business to move forward. And if you can't talk to me with it, then maybe you need to explore that relationship more than you need to explore the business.
Yeah. Okay. Before we close for today, Todd, we want to cover. I know, right? This is awesome. I love. We can talk for like 2 more hours if we wanted to. We want to hear. Give us the craziest attire situation interview you've ever had. Where the one that just stands out that was like, wow, that actually happened.
It was 2 summers ago.
Oh my gosh, it was that recent?
Yeah.
Okay, man.
2 summers ago. I got it afterwards, but this guy walks into, and he's a big dude. I mean, he looks like a defensive tackle, massive.
Like built or?
Yeah, just
okay.
big.
Okay, sure.
And he's wearing a sweater and a turtleneck in July in Atlanta, Georgia.
With a suit.
Yeah, with a jacket over top of it. And I'm going.
Is he sweating?
Oh, profusely.
Really?
Oh, dude. And I'm like, come to find out, the reason why he's wearing a turtleneck is because he's got tattoos running up the side.
Man, tough situation. That's a tough situation.
It is. It is. But he overdid it. The sweater, the turtleneck, and the jacket in July. Yeah. I mean, you could have gotten yourself like a turtleneck and just a jacket. Right. Or, you could have found something other than, because all I could keep on thinking about during the whole interview is this guy's going to pass out.
Oh my goodness.
It's too hot. It is a sweater and a turtleneck and a jacket in July in Atlanta, Georgia, dude.
I can't even imagine. I can't even be in a tank top and shorts in Atlanta, Georgia. I can't be in Atlanta during July, so I can't even imagine.
So I'm thinking, it's one of those things, like you said, like a nose ring or something that sticks out.
Yeah.
The whole interview, I couldn't tell you anything about the individual. Nothing. There's not a thing of his resume he could have said, because all I can sit there is just sweat just pouring down his face.
Oh God!
Him trying to grab his thing and pat his face.
My heart goes out to him.
I did it, but all I can think about is, dude, why did you do this?
Yeah.
And after the interview, I asked him, I said, dude, what, why did you? Oh, I had these tattoos that come up here, and I didn't want anybody to see them. I'm like, okay, the turtleneck I could have gotten with, but the sweater? Well, I just thought it looked better. And I'm like, no, it didn't. It was actually a complete and utter bomb. I said, you could have done the turtleneck, and I wouldn't have liked it. And it would have been a strike against you if you'd had a turtleneck in the jacket, like trying to go like the Don Johnson 1980s Miami
Right,
Vice
right.
kind of looking
I mean,
things.
he wouldn't have had the tie, so he
No,
wouldn't have lost points
that
already.
would have been a
Yeah,
strike for me.
yeah, yeah,
Now, that's why you have a panel and you have two other people
yeah,
sitting on
yeah.
there these days. So I
Fair.
might have my bias that says he didn't have a tie. It's kind of a strike. They might be okay. Well, you're old, so that's why it's your strike. Okay, but all the other things. But if it's just one on one, yeah, it'd be a strike. That's for sure. Um, but yeah, that's why I try to tell young people, be careful what you do.
Sure.
I get it in the moment. You think it's great,
I know.
but you're going to grow up and you're probably want to have a profession that maybe pays you differently and you might have to dress differently.
It's weird though, right? Because at the same time, I mean, I'm sure you're seeing what's going on with Generation Z, where these things are not in medical sales, but in other corporate structures, these things are becoming more accepted,
Oh yeah.
right?
My oldest daughter, she has tattoos and she's a first grade school teacher.
There you go.
I mean, when I grew up, you didn't see tattoos on any
Yeah,
teacher.
that did not exist.
You did not see a tattoo, much
Did
less your
not
first grade
exist.
school teacher. Yeah, but she's got a couple of tattoos that sit down through here.
Yeah, yeah.
And I asked her when you went to the interview, I said, did you cover it up like we talked about? She goes, yeah. And she goes, then they found them. I was moving my hand, it kind of dripped down my sleeve, kind of came down a little bit. And, it showed that she has like little feathers there. And I'm like, well, what they say? They looked at it. I go, okay. So what do you think is going to happen? She goes, I don't know. She fortunately got the job, and she's been there for 5 years. And now she shows her tattoo.
But look, the pendulum, like you said, the pendulum is always swinging.
Oh, yeah.
And it seems to be, I mean, before you know it, people with tattoos that are impossible to hide are going to be the same people making the decisions on who needs to be hired.
100%.
And, that's going to beget more people with tattoos that are impossible to hide. So it's interesting. It is interesting. But as we established early on, it's always better to be safe than sorry. It's always better to wear the tie for the hiring manager that might really appreciate it versus not, and literally count yourself out or lose points because they want to see it.
I just don't see where a man showing up in coat and tie and a woman showing up as in business dress goes wrong.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Working in our industry.
Facts.
I just don't see where that has any play for it to go wrong.
Yeah. Last thing, doctors. Even in my early days, doctors were just doing it all. I had doctors with long hair, gold chains. No, Todd, thick, not even black or ethnic, white men with thick gold chains, long hair, like free as a bird. And I'm like, wow, what do you see now with doctors? Do you feel like doctors are even getting freer and freer and freer? Do you feel like they're getting more and more conservative? Do you feel,
I don't think they're getting more and more conservative. I think they're getting more and more, I think they're getting more and more free because more and more of them being bought by the hospital, which causes them to be more and more, this is my 9 to 5. Which says then,
I can do whatever I want because I got a secure job and I don't have to worry about my level of professionalism to attract business.
Yep. So if I want to have my flowing long hair and I want to have my dangly 6 earrings coming down and I want to have my tattoos hanging out here, and I mean, and I always tell the reps, guess what though? They're the doctor. They get to do
Fair
that.
enough. It is.
Doesn't mean you get to.
It is what it is.
And I always tell reps, the one last thing we talked about, go back to one thing, I always try to make sure reps understand. I joked about I like when reps buy new cars and buy houses because, they're going to go work for that. But I also tell them, be careful what you buy. You don't want to be the person that walks in the garage and you pull up in your Porsche or BMW and the nurse who's working 312s drives off in her little beat up Honda 1987 Accord.
See you coming out, yeah.
And see you pulling out, and all they're thinking about, well, geez, Todd's over there making a whole lot more coin
than I am.
And now you build the resentment part of it. Yeah. Oh, he tries to act like he's a doctor. So you have to be careful in what you even buy. I have a work car. most cars, if you work with a big corporation, they provide you a car like an
Sure.
Ethicon or a J&J, and
Yeah.
whatever they provide, you can always say, hey, look, that's what they gave me.
That's
Because I know
company
some
car.
of them are
That's what
trying
it
to
is. What it is. Yep.
go green and give them Teslas and stuff. And hey, I've had some horrible cars in my lifetime. I remember I worked for Olympus and I drove a minivan. That's fantastic. But just, you're a guest. You don't want to be presumptuous and be ostentatious for men or women. And as reps, if the doctor wants to do that stuff, they've earned the right. As a rep,
There it is. There it is, Todd. This is awesome. I love this discussion, Todd. For those listening, I hope you learned something today, and tune in because this will be back and we'll have more topics to discuss on this show. Thanks again, Todd.
awesome.
I love how we dug deep into truly how to own the interview process. You know, a lot of candidates miss the mark because they don't understand the dynamics at play, and they don't really understand the hiring manager's style. They're not even aware of it. And on top of that, you know, the real performers, the real candidates that get the offer, they really separate themselves because they don't just describe how they're going to show up when they're presented with a situation or asked a question. They show up with crystal clear examples that are very realistic. Again, they're crystal clear. You're not wondering what they're trying to communicate. And all of this brings real confidence to the conversation. It relaxes the interviewer. It makes them feel like this person can really make something happen if I put them in that position. That's the real difference. But we're not done yet. So subscribe so you do not miss a beat. And we'll see you on the next episode of the Medical Sales Podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And remember, I have a customized and personalized program that gets you into the medical technology industry as a sales professional, or any type of role for that matter. Become a top performer in your position and masterfully navigate your career to executive level leadership. Check out these programs and learn more at evolvesuccess.com by visiting our site, filling out an application, schedule some time with one of our account executives, and allowing us to get you where you need to be. Stay tuned for more awesome content with amazing interviews on the Medical Sales Podcast.